What's up, adventurers? It's Phil, and today I feel like being naughty.
Hey. So today we're going to start with a couple of basic knots. These are good knots to know just to get you started in knot tying, and also good things to know for use around the house and things like that. So let's get started. So the first knot you should know by now, pretty basic, it's called the overhand knot. It's made by simply making a loop, curling around, and back through the hole, nice and tight. That's the overhand knot. Our next knot is called the half hitch, and this is a pretty simple knot to do as well. Simply take your rope, go around your post, up and through, very much like making an overhand knot. Tighten it around your post, and you're good to go. A slightly more secure knot is called the clove hitch. This is done by looping around your post, and instead of going up and through and making your square knot, you simply go over your own rope this way, around, and now go through. And when it pulls tight, that's your clove hitch. Show you again. So you go around your post, over your own line, around your post again, and up through between the two ends of rope right here. Pull this tight, pull this tight, there's your clove hitch. Now a bow line is pretty basic, pretty easy. Take your length of rope, make a loop, simply go through your loop, around your rope, back through your loop, pull tight. That's your bow line. Bow line can also be used on a post. Simply go around your post, then make your loop, down through your hole, back around, and tighten your knot. And now you have a nice, strong hitch. Bow line. Now, one of the reasons that the bow line is such an awesome knot to use and know as a basic knot is that once you've made your loop and everything's been cinched down nice and tight, no matter how tight it goes, no matter what it is you're pulling on and holding on to, as long as that knot holds, which it can hold pretty decent amount of weight, when it's all said and done, once the line is loose, it's very easy to simply pull the loop apart. Our next basic knot is used for joining two lengths of rope together. This is called the square knot. A square knot's pretty simple. One length of rope, two lengths of rope. You want to make sure that your ends are on the same side. Here's how this works. Make a loop with one length. With your second length, go back through the loop, around your rope end, back up through the loop, and once they're even, pull tight. That's your square knot. This is a really strong rope for joining ropes together. It holds up pretty well in the water, and with tension, it'll always stay tight. Once tension is released, it's rather easy to break apart. Now, if you tie this knot improperly, it's known as the granny knot. Here's an example. Your rope ends are at opposite ends. Here's what happens. You make your loop, you go through. Uh-oh, I just tied it backwards. Well, it looks like a square knot. Yeah, it's pretty close. But, they came apart. Because let's be honest, your granny could tie a better knot. Now this next knot is called a sheet bend. This is also good for joining two lengths of rope together. It's not as strong as a square knot, but it's made by simply making your loop, and again you pass through the loop around your end, but this time, instead of going back through like the square knot, we're going to simply tuck under our length of rope going through. When this pulls tight, it cinches down on that end, causing a bite that won't come out. Again, once the tension is released, pretty easy to break this knot apart. Now there's also a variation on this called the double sheet bend. It's pretty simple to do. Make your loop again, pass up through around the ends, and you're going to go back through just like you're making your normal sheet bend, but you want to pull a little bit of extra line through, go around again, and now pass under your line. Pull this tight, and you now have your double sheet bend. Holds a little bit tighter and a little bit more secure than a single sheet bend. A lot less chance of slipping there. Now if you're like I used to be and you just have random rope sizes lying around, not everything's the same, a sheet bend is really good for joining a large and a small rope together as well. Here's why. Make your loop. You're going to go through your loop, around your ends, make your bite, and pull it tight. Make sure your big rope doesn't get out. And there you go. Now with tension, this will hold really, really well with your short rope and your long rope. Without tension, it might come apart a little easier than using two ropes of the same size. But still, easy to break apart. That way you're not knotting up and wasting your rope. And now we'll finish off with one of my favorites, the chain knot. The reason this one is so good is because it can hold a pretty decent amount of weight and still, it's probably the easiest knot to break apart. Simply make your loop, pass another loop through that loop, and tighten just like your normal everyday knot. Pull your loop back down to a decent size, take another loop, pass through, and repeat the process. And you can continue doing this as many times as you want, and literally make yourself a chain out of rope. Now you're asking yourself, why is this one of my favorite knots? The reason being, if you have a nice tight load here, and your rope is being held in place by all of these knots, instead of having to spend 45 minutes trying to undo all these over-tightened knots that you just can't get undone, simply grab the end of your rope that's already very secure and pull against the load, and all your knots come right out very easily.
So now it's time for some practical application.
So let's say you're out in the woods with your dog and you need to take a break. If he's not one that'll just sit on his own, or if you're in a place that they have to be on a leash at all times, you might need to have a place to tie him up. If you don't have a stake, here's a pretty easy way to do it. Take the loop of his leash and another length of rope and make yourself a square knot. Pull it tight. Then find a good place to hitch them to. Make yourself a clove hitch. Make sure you do it right. Pull it tight. And there you go. Now your dog is secure, and you can go about making camp. Let's say you're setting up camp, and you just don't have enough rope to make it from one end to the other. This is where that sheet bend may come in handy. Get your other length of rope ready. Make your sheet bend. And now you've got enough rope. And now you've got enough rope to go all the way around the tree. Now the hitch that you choose to use really doesn't make much of a difference. It's more about personal preference. So let's say I want to secure this line. I could simply do a half hitch. And hope that it's going to hold. But half hitches don't really hold under a lot of load. My obvious next choice is a clove hitch. And there you go. My personal choice is the bow line. Make your loop. And now you've got a nice tight knot that can bear a good amount of load without coming apart. Now we finish off with my favorite, the chain knot. So you've got your line pulled really tight. You want to make a nice good knot, but you don't want it to be cinched down too hard to undo. Simply make your first half hitch using a loop. Make another half hitch using a loop. And now you've got yourself a nice chain knot. It's still nice and taut, but to undo it, simply pull against the load and your knot's gone. Always make sure to use proper rope care when putting away your ropes and cords. So guys, that's it for your basic knots. Make sure to learn these and use them in your practical everyday applications, as well as when you're out in the woods doing whatever it is you're doing. Until next time, I'm Phil with Adventurous Life Outdoors. We'll see you on the trails.
Ha ha ha.